Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, look, everyone's awake.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you for coming, joining us on our tumultuous day of renovation here, but thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you for those who are joining us online. So today our lecture is going to be done by our friend Marco, and he's going to talk about good spiritists. But before we start, as always, our lovely Daniel is going to do the initial reading, and I will do the prayer after.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today I'm going to be reading the book Happy Life. Never lose hope. Whatever may happen, keep believing. If everything is against you and failure threatens you with despair, even then accept divine assistance. Only what is best for us happens. The God is the law of love. The law of God is the law of love. And love can do everything and does do everything. When you think that help will not arrive in time, if you continue hoping, you will happily discover that it reached you minutes before the disaster. The person who despairs has already lost part of the battle he was going to fight and goes forward at a disadvantage.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
All right, so let's now close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus and all the beloved friends present here today with us. Let's ask them to open our minds and our hearts for the lecture of today, that we may be able to absorb as much as possible for our own personal growth. Please inspire our friend Mark, so he may be able to deliver this message to us. Thank you, so be it.
Do I stay here?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you all for coming today. So we're gonna have a conversation today about the good spiritists, right? And I think the original topic was to talk about good Christians or true Christianity, right? And I find that it was pretty much you can need to change two terms, right? What is actually being a true Christian, and what is it to be like a true spiritist, which is in a sense, it's pretty much the same thing, right? So we're going to start, with a few questions that I typically get asked every time I'm presenting. So, and even like when I'm work and I'm somewhere else, I'm just it's like, what is the spiritist, right? I think that's a fair question for particularly North America and in Canada, particularly, when most people kind of don't know us, right? They don't know like what we believe or what we do, and we kind of have to explain in a relatively short sentence or a short period of time without lecturing someone for 2 hours about everything we do in spiritism. We have to try to explain to someone like, what is it, right? And I even get this same type of question when I'm presenting in spiritist centers, like, what is the essence of this? Like, what exactly does it mean? And that, I think, one of the things that come to mind sometimes, particularly for maybe some of us even here in spiritism, is like, are we different, right? Are we special? Like, some people still have that sense that, for some reason, think that some sort of superiority, moral elevation, just by the fact that they declare themselves spiritists, which is not the case, right? And a great example, like I always think about this quite often, is that I know so many people they are not spiritists. They don't declare themselves spiritists. But they endorse and they live by the concept of being spiritism much more than some people that are actually inside the Spiritist Center and declare themselves spiritists, right? Because the truth is, being a good Christian, a true Christian or a true spiritist, is really living by and or trying as much as you can to improve yourself every day, right? It's not to be perfect, right? It's not to do everything right every single time. We're not going to be able to do that now, right? We still do a lot of mistakes, but putting that effort, right, or showing that you actually do what you read and what you know, right? Which is something that is hard to do. Like it's not as easy as it sounds, right? I can give an example, and I like this example quite often, is that my grandmother, she discarnated a couple of years ago. But when she was alive, and I remember this, like, at the time, I was totally shocked by it, because I could not understand at all what she was doing. But basically, she lived on a pension that was like peanuts. Like she couldn't even pay for her own. Like we had to support the entire house, and she got a little bit of pension from the government, and so she basically had no means of, any material things she could buy. Impossible, right? But she would buy like basic necessities for the house. She would buy food, for example, right? Like a pack of rice, for example, like a 10-kilogram rice pack, right? And all of a sudden, someone would come on the door and basically walk right into the house and go to her like, actually, do you have any food? Because I don't have anything. And she's like, yeah, you can go in and pick up whatever you want from my kitchen. Right? And then another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. I would say like by the end of the week, she basically ran out of food, almost, right? She's like, she's always like, she's not asking questions. Right? She was not judging. She was not closing her door. Her door was always open, right? People would come and eat in her house. She would cook for them sometimes. She would just go and, I want something. I know you need. Are you hungry? She would actually stand, go cook for them, serve like whatever dinner, whatever meal they were serving at the time. And she would do it like so naturally, right? As if like there's nothing wrong going on here. Like this is like, and obviously, when you're, well, not there yet, let's put it this way, right? You look at that scenario, like, why in the world are you doing this, right? Like you can't. That's how our minds work, right? You can't do this, right? Because you're gonna, you're gonna run out of food. Like, how are you gonna sustain, right? And every time, all of a sudden someone would come and say, her name was Deuselina. They called her Deusine. All of a sudden someone would come and say, Deusine, I brought you here this cart of stuff here that, I don't know if you need it, and then they'll just deliver all this stuff to her out of nowhere, right? See the spirituality working, right? And then again, I'll be shocked. I was like, why is that guy like I could not grasp that concept, right? So she was a true spiritist. She's not a spiritist, I declare. Like she was a hardcore Christian Catholic, like go to church every week and do all the prayers, memorize every single thing, went by the book on every single detail, like everything. There's a rule, there's a way of doing it. She was 100% Catholic, right? She could not really even understand any concept that we're talking about here in Spiritism. But she was much more of a Spiritist than anyone I knew at the time that declared themselves Spiritists. So this is an interesting concept that I think we have to think about all the time, is that, reality is being a good Christian, right? In our case, being a good Spiritist is not necessarily knowing more or less quotes about a book that you read or a lecture that someone went in there, memorized 5 lines from the book and looked so smart, That's important. Yeah, we have to learn, right? But actually acting in the way There are all these books here telling us, right? And the Bible, and then the Gospels, and the books in Spiritism, and so many other books that are not in Spiritism, but also have a lot of Spiritist concepts into it. So everything comes from the same place, right? So I was just talking about, I was in Taiwan, right? So I was in Taiwan not too long ago, and they follow Taoism, which is like the same religion as China, mainland China. You guys probably know very well that Taiwan, it was culturally linked to China for thousands and thousands of years, right? Although now there's a different government and all that. I don't go into politics, but culturally speaking, they are pretty much the same, right? It's a continuum, right? So we were visiting a temple, Taoist temple, and we went there, and they were having a ceremony at the time we were there, right? And we're looking at, there's a lineup of people, and then at the end of this line, there are this, you can see that they're workers of the house, let's put it this way, right? And they have this like nicely dressed, like a white coat on them, and you kind of, everyone, a person would come to the front of them, they would stop, do like a quick prayer, right? And they would kind of move their hands around them, the back, the front of their head, the back of the head, and then the front, right? So they're basically, following what the Indians call chakras, right? Or, we call this energy fulcrums that are connected. They're doing exactly that. So actually they're doing a pass. Exactly like we do, exactly the same thing. The only difference, like they're obviously using their burning incense, like the thing that they use traditionally. They're doing it, right? Instead of using the hands, they're doing that. But they did exactly the same pattern, like you would see in any other places, exactly the same way, what we call benzedeira, like in Brazil many years ago. They would do exactly the same thing, but they use a little piece of leaves and something that would just like a water, right? Exactly the same thing, right? And then at the end, like they go through it, and then they'll line up in a different line to get water, like purified water, right? Exactly the same way we do it. There's a little bucket of water, and someone will deliver a little bit, just exactly like that one sitting in the back there. They would deliver a little bit of water in a bottle to them. They would cap and take home. And I was looking at that. I was like, this is a 6,000-year tradition, right? That we're just looking at, right? And the resemblance. And then we started talking with some people of the workers of the house, because you can imagine, the mean spirits of seeing that, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn what this guy's doing, right? And then they showed me this translation. There's a big screen, like a touch screen, with the translation to English of everything they do. And they do, like for example, the translation was not perfect. They called exorcism, but realistically, I can see that there was a translation error. It was not that. It was really like disobsession. That would be the translation. Obviously, they're following the Catholic definition of it. But it was disobsession. They actually had this obsession session exactly like you see in a mediumship meeting in Brazil or here, exactly the same way. So they have all these things, right? And they have the lectures, and obviously they have many other things that are the tradition. But what I'm trying to say is that the source of all this information is coming from the same place, right? And obviously in Spiritism, we're so blessed that we have this enormous amount of information that was delivered to us like this, right? So this is it, right? Easy to read, by the hands of so many mediums and so many spirits that came and say, okay, this is the deal, this is what we're going to do. Kardec came, organized to us. So we have this incredibly comprehensive amount of information that makes it so technically easier, right, for us to grasp the idea. But the concepts are exactly the same, right? And we actually don't need to do any of this, call anything to be actually the true Christian, or so I think that is one of the concepts that intrigues me the most. Particularly, the more I work in Spiritism, the more I study it, the more I realize that, I think we in Spiritism are the ones. There are, when you're in school and there's always a few students that have a hard time moving through the grades, right? You try, they do extra classes, they come to work, they work harder, right? They have to deliver more information to them. There's tutoring, there's like all these things that they do to kind of pull them back in with the class, because the class is moving, right? And some students are lagging behind, right? So they need to say, okay, this is the deal. We're going to do all of this so we can kind of bump you. I think that's us in Spirited. I think we're the ones that are probably needing more help. They're like, okay, let's try to give this information right here to them, right, like right in their face, right, and let's see if they can kind of boost a little. So in the end, I think we're probably the ones that are more in trouble, not the ones that are less in trouble. Let's put it this way, right, spiritually speaking. And it's interesting that if you go to there's a very nice passage. It's from the book Letters and Chronicles from Brother X. And I every time I talk about Spiritism, Spiritists, I use this reference because I think it illustrates well what I'm saying. Right? So in chapter 7 of that book, so they're describing a visit of Kardec to Dubreuil, right? One of their dreams on sleep, right? Partially separated from the body. Obviously, Kardec was taken to visit when he was writing the books. And then that was the time he was writing the Spirits book. So when he was writing the Spirits book, he was taken on that trip, right? And the first thing he noticed, Brother X describes that when he gets to the Umbral, Kardec is like, well, I see a lot of people here, so I expect to see tyrants and like these incredibly evil people in history, right? Where are those people, right? He asks Brother X, and then he said, well, they're not here, right? And he's like, okay, that's surprising. On ground, right? You expect to see all this, what we see as evil spirits. Where are they? Well, they're well ahead. They're all evolved. They're all done. They're actually living on another planet right now, because they worked on their evolution, many of them, right? They kept going. And then Kardec is really, really interested. And then he's like, well, what about the persecutors of Christ? The people who like threw stones at him and all those things? They all move on. Like they're all gone. They made their mistakes, they recognized it, they moved on, that's it, right? They're not here. They're not in the broad one, right? Many of them have no idea what they're doing, right? Many of those spirits are like, there's a mass of people attacking man, they were just going to attack it, like they're basically completely clueless about what's happening around them, right? And then he asks about, for example, Caligula, right? He's like, what is it? He's like, nope, not here anymore, all done, all went out of the way. And then Kardec, extremely surprised, obviously, right? Not understanding the concept of, what was happening there. He asks the mentor at the time, like, okay, so who is here in this umbral, like this suffering area? These are the people that knew the law of God and didn't work on it. They're stuck here. Think about it. So at umbral, at the height of that suffering scene he's seeing, those are those who knew the laws of God. Those are the Christians, right? And think about this, how shocking that is, right, for us, because, the different responsibilities we have, right? So imagine someone who has absolutely no clue about any laws. I'll give you an example. She's right in that room right there. Her name is Isabella. She's 2 years old. She has no idea of the rules of the world or the universe. So for her, like if she wants to roll down the stairs or jump in front of the car, like just like absolutely meaningless, right? So she's a 2-year-old. She doesn't know any of the social rules, guides. She's learning it, right? So if she goes out there and pushes another kid, there's not because she's evil, right? It's because she absolutely has no idea how to use her hands, place them, respect space. She's learning that, right? Do we punish her for that? Of course not. Like we teach and say, hey, that's kind of a bad idea. Let's not do that, right? Now imagine if I do the same thing. Now I know that. I know space. I know rules. I know, I know what battery is. I know what assault charges are, right? I can't just go there and absolutely push someone on the ground. If I do that, I'm actually going to be charged with assault, right? And I go to jail, right? Do you see the differences in the punishment, right? Because of the level of understanding and responsibility that is embedded into the idea of development. So if you think about now moral, we do the same thing within the moral perspective, right? The spirit who is barely taking the first steps into understanding what love is, right? And go out there and throw a stone at Jesus when he's being, when he's carrying the cross, doesn't even know what's going on, right? Full of raw emotions inside of it. You go to a spiritual world, you have a chat with other mentors, and the mentors are going to say, listen, buddy, this is the law, let's learn this. Like, let's learn to be nice and help each other. He'll pick it up, he'll change, he'll move on. That's clear, all the way. Right? Now, think about someone who's been through it, learned it, got references, book, has taught everything, goes and do the same thing. You go to the spiritual world, what a shock it is for you to think that you prepared yourself for that, you knew what to do, and you failed. You see the shock. That shock basically is caused the most of the suffering, right? Because for that spirit was that, like when Kardec is saying, these are the Christians that knew all about God and still went in there and did the things, the negative things. So they actually feel a lot more, right? The consequences of their actions. And sometimes so much so they can actually get quite stuck on it. And that's being stuck on that episode of that negativity is actually what drives them, what attracts them to that constant zone of suffering, right? That you see in the ground. So again, just a reminder to us, right? The importance of understanding, like not only understanding, but actually practicing, right? What we talk about all the time, right? Or at least trying, right? Because Allan Kardec's going to say to us, when we get in the chapter number 17, and this is obviously absolutely well known, probably one of the most well known sentences in entire Spiritism, is that the true spirits are recognized for their moral transformation efforts. The efforts they make to overcome their evil inclinations, right? That's what I'm saying. In other words, we are known, like the true spiritist, or the true Christian in that sense, is known not by their perfection, right? Because we're not there yet, right? We're going to get there, right? But by the efforts we make every day to do that. Do you think about it, right? So, and we know the story of Chico Xavier and his recent incarnation on Earth. We know very well that. So he's a great example of that. Like, is Chico Xavier perfect? No, he's not perfect, right? Perfect. We're talking about like a very select level class of spirits, like where Jesus is part, right? Those are perfect spirits, right? They've been through it. I can't even relate. I can't even understand what that level of perfection is. So far away from me right now, right? But close to us, Chico Xavier, although not perfect spirit, obviously is morally elevated, definitely. But he also worked every day to overcome his own issues, right? And it's funny because he actually talks about it all the time, right? Every time. This is a true spiritist, right? This is the guy that's humble enough to say to everyone who wants to hear that, yeah, he does silly things, he makes mistakes, he laughs at himself, right? He complained about his eye, like he complained about things, like his mentor's gonna come, it's like, hey, wait a minute. Like he complained about one eye, you have the other eye, I go to work, right? He talks about it to us, like, because he's trying to teach us along the way. As he's learning it, he's trying to teach us at the same time. Like, listen, even me, see where I am right now, and I'm struggling too, different types of struggles, but it's a process, right? So he's such a great example because he's a classic, like, he never went, in a spiritist center. It's like, I'm the speaker, spiritist, that came here to illuminate you guys with my beautiful words that are memorized in the last month about this book. He never did that, right? He would come, shake hands, pray, right? Sit at the table with everyone, right? Communicate with the spirits, cry together, bless together, eat together. So he would always teach, very much like Jesus used to teach, right? Think about Jesus, like the most perfect spirit that ever got close to us. When he incarnated here, which he obviously didn't have to, but he came obviously to help us out. So he would come here in our own flesh. How hard that's, I think about it all the time, how hard that is, right? For the spirit to go into this body, you know. So he would come here, and how he would teach? He would go to a village, he would sit down on the ground, right? He would go fishing with them, he would like scribble on the ground, he would talk, right? He would walk to the village, like he used exactly the type of humble costumes of the side at that time, right? In a very humble, loving way, right? So in a way, in Chico, he teaches us exactly what that concept that Allan Kardec brings to us, is that he's showing us the efforts, right? And now, obviously, Chico is an incredible spirit that helped us so much, but you can take this to our own world right now, where we live, right? And you can see people that every single day are trying, right? Like, and one of the reasons why I am a spiritist today is because of that. And I like to tell that story too, because when I was in, and I'm not a spiritist from family or from birth, you know, I've learned it, I was called, I would say, right, to come in. And obviously I realized that I was late, because I probably supposed to do this like 4 incarnations ago. And then they keep trying, like, yeah, no. And then all of a sudden they kind of, okay, go. Like you pushed me in, and thank you, my mentor for that. Helped me a lot. But you know, when I came to Spiritism, one of the things that really shocked me, similar to the story that I told you about my grandmother, because I was actually shocked when I was a kid looking at that happen. And no one's doing anything, right? And like everybody's small. So the other thing that shocked me is like I had friends in both in high school and then university that every single day, no matter what happened, they would come and show this grace, this nice vibration, like this good thing about everything. Like it's like the world is falling apart. And they're like, you know what? It's okay. Like, you know, it will pass, right? That's exactly what Shiva tells us too, right? The Veda tells us, the Yoga tells us. This shall also pass, right? And I'm like, I have to understand how you got to that level, because to me, again, that was a shock. Like I was about to go and hit someone in the face, and the other person was like, you know, they actually don't really know what they're doing. They actually did it. It's not they were saying about it. Like they're like, oh, I read in the book that you have to, you know. No. They were like 100% calm and with tenderness. They would say, you know what, that's okay, right? Don't get upset. You know, let's move on. You know what? They're always like this. Always like every single. And I'm like, but one day I had to like, tell me what this is, because there's definitely something wrong going on here. Right? I could not understand that. Right? Then it's when they're like, well, since you asked, and then they're like, okay, I'm a spiritist, and this is kind of what we believe, and this is how we act, so this is what we do. And from that point on, obviously, I was not into it, because I was intrigued enough to a point that, okay, I need to know what this is. Right? So my journey to spiritism started with someone who I recognized as a true spiritist because of the efforts they were, and it's not that they're perfect, they were not perfect, they were upset too sometimes to do all of it, but they were putting effort. So whenever they had a chance, they would put the effort, right, to improve themselves. Right? And I never forget that, and we're still friends. This is, and I like to tell the story too, because she was really fundamental in our journey, right, to become spiritists. So just to summarize that, so realistically speaking, by definition, like you don't have to be a spiritist to be a good spiritist. No, I don't need to declare myself spiritist to be a good spiritist, because your actions is what count, right? Not really what you tell people, right? We have so many examples. So even like in this is quite interesting. So Jennifer White is this is a beautiful story. So the Make-A-Wish Foundation started when Jennifer White's daughter passed, right? Her name was Olivia, right? That was 2012. And it was sepsis, right? That so this is occurring because of that. So when when she got to this, when her mother, right, Jennifer, went through it, she had this idea of having a ball, like a princess ball, right, to kids that were going through a lot of this challenging diseases, too, right? Out of nowhere, she came up with the idea of doing like 500 tickets, get a ball for them, so they would actually be the stars of the ball, and then at the same time, she would charge a ticket and raise money for them. That was a great idea. So the tickets sold out in about 30 minutes. She got it, she made it, it was 2012, and now we have Make-A-Wish Foundation, which basically, um, helps, empowers, and gives some sort of a sense of livinghood, of excitement and life, right, to kids that are going through terminal diseases and all of those things, right? Jennifer, for example, in the height of her trauma of losing someone, she actually, instead of closing herself into her own sadness, right, she actually works to others. Like, is she a spiritist? No, she's not a spiritist. But is she doing exactly what we're told to do in every single one of those books? Yes. So by definition, she's a great true Christian, right? Because this is the concept, is the law of love. She's enacted it to the highest level that we can think about, right, close to us in our society, right? So again, this is the concept that I want to bring, is the idea that really living by those concepts, living by the idea of loving one another is really what counts, right? No matter how much we go to church or go to center or do this or do that, but the important is like what we do, like in our daily lives. And we have obviously many other examples, right? So we have the story about, I like the stories of the unknown people, like Mary Gringer. She was, I think she worked in a hospital for kids, right, for about, she basically comforted kids that are going through disease for about 40 years, and she never had a child. So her whole life she dedicated to all the kids, mental health and support, right? So we have this tiny examples everywhere around us. So I can bring examples of Mother Teresa, which we all know, and it is absolutely incredible what she's done. But if you bring close to us, it's happening all the time, and we can do that too. Why are we not doing it though? Or are we doing it not enough, right? We're doing like you see in the Missionaries of Light. That's what we're doing right now. So if you read the book, you see the spirits are trained, like these mediums are trained entire existences to, to go to the school in the spiritual world, say, okay, you're gonna go there, you're gonna do this, you're gonna help with the mediumship, you're gonna work on this, you're gonna do that. So they come here, the very first challenge they have, they would bail, right? This is really like us, realistically, right? We tend to bail, like on every single challenge that we get in front of us, right? We go out. And then eventually we find this very, very tortuous and sinister and even more challenging way to kind of revert back to the path that we're supposed to take, right? And it tends to be a lot harder to do that, right? But we don't realize that's happening when it's happening, right? And that's what really this indignation is like, because they're going to come and and they're going to discuss their failures, right? And I think, to me, I think, well, I have to say that because that's how I think. I've probably done a million times in the last incarnations, and I'm doing a tiny bit more this time, but I'm not doing enough, right? So that's a concept that I had in my mind all the time. Okay. So in the mediums book, there's an interesting passage that I like to discuss too, is that spirits they're unaware they are spiritists. That's what we talked about in this book. Item number 26, right? So hesitant individuals were usually spiritualists, or in other words, believing in some sort of life beyond matter, right? That's the concept of spiritualism, right? Most of them have a vague intuition about spiritual ideas. They aspire towards something that they're not quite able to define, right? So spiritism appears to them like a ray of light, right? The clarity that dissipates the fog. That would be the description of my current incarnation, right? So spiritism was like a ray of light that went into my life and like completely transformed everything after, right? So I was in that fog at that time, right? So spirits without realizing it, there's a different category we call. So properly speaking, these are a variety of nuances of proceeding of this class. So even though they have never heard of spiritism per se, they have an innate sentiment about the grand principles that result from it. So this is actually written by Allan Kardec in this book, right? So it's worth the reading because actually he talks exactly about this concept that we bring today. Okay. Now, are there different types of spiritists? Now, these are people like, we're talking about more like us now, right? So this is interesting because there's a lot of people that come to spiritism with these ideas of, seeking the phenomenon, right? Like, I want something that's really strange or unusual, unbelievable, right? I want to see, I want to actually see a spirit with my own eyes, right? I want to see things moving, like I want to see things changing in my life. I want to see someone giving a message to me in my ear and talking to me about something I need to do. And, this is exactly how spiritism started, right? And we know that about the moving tables and the messages and all of those things. So that was the phenomenon. But Allan Kardec, through his entire work, has been telling us like this was actually had a role, right, in the existence of spiritism. But the true work in spiritism is more the consolation, the education, and the constant change towards the good. Right, that's what he tells us. Right. We do also have a lot of spiritists that, and I think I'll put myself in that category a little bit. Is that, well, we know what we have to do, but we're not doing it, right? To the fullest of it, right? So this is something that we still have to work on, and a lot of us are still into that category. And then there's the true practicing spiritist, or the true spiritist, which is putting the effort, right? So I do have in some, I like to say, I like to do it myself, like, yeah, I can see me doing some of it, right? Putting some work in a lot of things, and I still lag in other things, and that's fine, right? That's where we are right now, as long as we're aware of it. Right? And then there's the, there's the fanatic, exalted spiritist, right? This is not from Allan Kardec, by the way. I'm not making this up. This is actually in the media book, right? And then Allan Kardec's going to say, so these fanatics, he said, or adherents are more noxious than useful to spiritism. They're less capable of being convincing since their judgment is rightly distrusted. They're easily fooled by fraudulent spirits or by persons who try to exploit their gullibility. This happens all the time, right? Because many spirits come to this planet with an incredible mission of doing big things and helping a lot of people. And if they're not grounded enough to understand the responsibility of what they're doing, see example Chico Xavier, it's so easy to use their own sense of importance or ego, or like how different, how knowledgeable they are. It's so easy to use that to take them away from that route. Example, Valdivia, for example, right? This is the two great examples of mine, right? So easy to distract them, right, from that route, right? And you can see Valdo, obviously, through this influence, through the work he's done, which is a beautiful work, amazing medium, no doubt about it, right? But he was obviously obsessed, right, at that point by using his own ego, right? He was taken away from that role that he took. and then he decided to create his own thing, right? Where he was at the end of his life, basically this incarnation, he was even dressing up like a demigod type of thing, like almost like he has almost like a cult-like living, right? People would treat them as this kind of almost like a angelic or like a magical figure, right? Again, just by increasing that sense of superiority, right? And that was very sad, right? That we saw that half of that mission kind of collapsed, right? But that's one example. There's so many, right? There's so many other examples that people that go into a path in spiritism or in any other thing, and then all of a sudden are starts to be losing track of it, right? And in spiritism, by the way, we have a lot of that, right? We have many examples of people, well-known people in spiritism that slightly deviate, right, from that path, right? So we have to be very careful, right? And I like to say that too, because as a spiritist, this is something we have to be worrying about, right? When a messenger, right, is a true spiritist or not, right? So when someone who's delivering, is delivering a message to us, or a lecture, leading a study, or is developing a work, when that tips off away from the line that we think of the law of God, right? When does it slightly tracks away, right? We have so many examples of that, right? So we have to be careful. We have to be always vigilant. We have to know, right? How to analyze things and see, okay, this is not looking good, right? So, we have to be always careful about that. Okay. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 17, Allan Kardec is going to say this. So the truly good person is one who complies, this is by Allan Kardec, with the laws of justice, love, and charity in their highest degree of purity. So he's not only he's saying that we have to comply to the law, but he's saying that, well, we have to comply it and be at the maximum level possible of it to our current understanding, right? So if they examine their conscience concerning their own actions, they'll ask themselves if they have violated those laws, if they have practiced any evil, if they have done all the good that was possible. Okay, so this is a tough pill to swallow, okay? Because we are individuals that are really concerned in general, and that's part of our psyche, that's part of our ego development, of how do we look towards others, how do we portray ourselves, how do other people see us, right? So much so that we hide who we really are to live in a society sometimes, right? So we act differently. So we create this little shell, this alter ego shell, right, to protect who we really are, so people don't see who we really are inside of us, right? The spirituality helps us a little bit because they kind of wipe out our memory, right, from the past. Because if we remember, it would be harder, right? You can imagine going out there and realizing that you killed someone that you're not friends, right? That's going to be a shocker, right? But that could have happened, right? So, but we do protect ourselves, right? We create that barrier to kind of try to live as much as possible in society and kind of get through things going. Like that can also create problems, right? So what Allan Kardec is saying here is an exercise, is saying like, well, how about when you have a chance, right? You look inside your own conscience, right? And ask yourself this question: have I done all the good that was possible for me to do? And this is something I try to do, like almost every night, right? And I teach this guys to do too. Like every night for good, like think about your day. How was it? Right? What happened? And I let them talk, and I talk too, right? And you have this cathartic moments where you start to realize that there's a lot of things we could have done better, right? But if we're constantly creating this sense that things are great, right? Because we create this personality that, we kind of hide what we're doing, right? Even to ourselves sometimes, right? We can never break through that shell. We can never really change. So that's the concept of knowing yourself, right? But then from know yourself, it's tough. I don't know if you tried that. Do you guys try that? I'm serious. Like, this is not easy, right? Because you start to really get deep into who you are. Sometimes it's scary. Right? But this is the chance you have to change, though. Because the problem is that, if it is scary and you don't look at it and you look away, how many times are you going to have to come in and do the same thing? Until one day we're slapped in the face with a challenge that forces us to do it. Because this is really what life is, right? So what Allan Kardec is doing in a single sentence is summarizing to us every lecture, everything beautifully you see about, how to do things, how to improve, how to know yourself, how you can read books about it, you can do all those things. You can do in this line, right? Have I done all the good that was possible for me to do? Right? And I can almost always answer this question, no. Me, Marco, I'm here talking to you, not because I'm better than any of this. The worst. I was probably the worst of the class. And they threw me in and said, okay, because you haven't been learning any of this, I'm going to force you to read all the books on Spiritism. So maybe you're going to learn a tiny bit more how to do things. That's how I see myself, right? So I'm actually below, right? I'm not above anything, right? And my answer to my own question of this is typically no. Right? I have not done all the good things. And the more I study, the more I learn, and the more I think about this, the more my answers are no. Right? But at the same time, it gives me the hope and the understanding and the drive, right? To say, well, wait a minute, there are things actually I can do better. Maybe tiny, right? But it's possible. So, and then the letter that continues, like, if they have voluntarily disregarded any occasion to be useful, if anyone has any complaint to make of them, and finally, if they have done to others everything that they would have done to themselves. Not a few things, like everything. So this is the gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 17, called the Good Spiritists. So I like, and I wish I could do more, but I like reading this quite often, the same passage. I just read the same thing, right? I highlight it, circle it, and I even kind of memorize it a little bit, right? Because this is one of the pills that I like to take, to say, okay, let me take my daily dose of medicine, right? By doing this, I'm like, and you're gonna find, and I find this interesting because sometimes, now that I think about this like a lot, right? Yeah, and sometimes I'm driving, and I always drive is a challenging thing. Sometimes I don't typically drive, but when I drive in Toronto, I always have scenarios that I'm very upset, right, about things that happen, right? And I can't do it. I'm not to the level yet that I do it before I get upset. I usually do this after everything is all done and over. I'm super upset, something happened. And then I was like, oh my goodness, let me think about this. Like, have I done everything I could potentially have done to avoid the situation? The answer is always no. Like, could I have been more proactively distanced myself from the car ahead of me? Can I have anticipated that someone was trying to cut me off? Yes, we can, but we don't, right? We accelerate just a tiny bit more, right? So there's less space in front of me, so no one's gonna come in front of me, right? That's not what I do. Sorry. Oh, yeah, that's my moment now. But you see, this is a good example for us to think about, is that, doing this small exercises are so important, right? Because this really changes your mindset, your energy, your vibration, that brings you closer to the concept of loving one another and doing everything you can do to others like you want to do for yourself. That's exactly what we need to do, right? With the tiny little things, right? We don't have to set our goals And again, I talk, like Dana's 10 now, and I talk about goals with him now, and seeing like, what do you expect? Like, like I do this with my patients, like, what's the goal of your, why are you here today, right? Because if the goal is unreachable, it's all suffering. There's nothing you can do, because you can never achieve that goal. It's always going to be complaint and anger and bitterness all the way through that journey. And then at the end, you can't do it still, right? So if you set your goal appropriately, right, I definitely cannot, write 400 books that are mediumistically, like the Shri Shabir did. I cannot do it. I don't have the leadership for that. I don't have the time for that. I can't, right? But if I set my goals like on those little things, I'm actually nicer to other people. Every day I'm gonna be nicer to people around me. So I'm gonna vibrate some positivity. I'm gonna be the transformation like that my friend was to me. So that is my goal. And I think I can achieve that. I'm slightly kind of moving towards it, right? But I think if I be able to achieve a scenario where I can be close to people and be a light, like a beam, to the people who are suffering or anger, and they can see that, they can feel that energy coming from me, that they may be able to achieve that. Oh goodness, if I can do that, I'm gonna discredit a happy guy, right? I may get there and realize that I feel bitterly, but I'm still happy, right? Because I could have done 10 times more, fine, But at least I know I can do something, right? And this is what Spirit says. This is what the good Spiritist is. That effort, right? That challenge, that pill you have to take, that drive to be different, to be better, right? And I think that really summarizes what that is and what the moral person is. Like as Allan Kardec describes to in the Gospel of Spiritism, he's going to say moral persons are kind, right? Humane, benevolent, right? That's what he describes it, right? Towards all, right? Regardless, and this is written in the 1850s, right? So regardless of race or creed, because they regard all people as their brothers and sisters, right? So that's the moral person, right? That's exactly what Jesus told us. And that's exactly how many other religions also tell us, right? That expand way before Judaism, right? So let's try to do that. Let's just try to be the moral person, tiny little things moving forward, helping, right? As much as we can, right? And therefore being a good spiritist. Okay? So that's all I have to say today, guys. Thank you very much. Do you have any comments or questions over there? No? So, Daniel, can you bring check out the girls, please? Sounds good. You just, no, yeah, okay, what time? Can you go?
I just have a quick
Yes,
comment.
comments, yes.
Yeah, I touch the point that it is the transformation.
Yeah.
I can see myself.
Yes.
I'm trying.
Yes,
Very
yes.
hard.
There you go.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Yes.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
Every single minute.
Yes,
And you feel when you just answer somebody and
Yes.
it's some irritation.
yes.
And I say, oh my God, again. I'm learning and I want to be better, but
Yeah.
some days I don't know why.
Hard. Yeah.
And I feel so disappointed with
Yes.
myself. But
Yes.
I'm glad that I already have
You recognize it.
seen that, okay.
Yeah.
I already can reflect.
Yes.
I already can try. It's
Yes.
all day long try.
I know.
It's a call that somebody answered the phone, or
Yeah.
emails, every little thing. All day long you put in all this,
But what's interesting is that the fact that you're aware of it already shows us that you're way ahead of where you were before. Because, for most of us, we are doing things that may be irritating other people, and we're not even aware of it. We don't know. So I would, so there's a lot of things that we're doing, like they're not nice, but we're oblivious to it because we didn't even reach to the point that we recognize how that is, right? So it's a great example you gave me because you kind of already recognize in a lot of things what's happening. So kudos for you. Like you're doing amazing, right?
Yeah, even the tone of your
Yeah,
voice, sometimes
exactly.
you don't realize how you know,
I know.
with that
Yeah.
big ego.
And as you said, there's nothing like easy about this, right? This is really like a daily grind, like a daily work, right? And some days are not easy, some days you can do it, some things challenge you more, some things challenge you less. But we roll it, like we keep it moving, right? We keep momentum, right? And I think that's really the key message is like, don't give up, like take it positively, right? So take it like looking forward and say, hey, we'll get there, right? That's what spiritualism, that's the consolation that it brings, right? We will be perfect. So we don't have to fright that's, oh God, I can't make it, there's gonna be this transformation of the world, I'm gonna be kicked out of planet Earth. No, like we create all these things in our mind we're so excited about this planetary transitions and all those things that we don't worry about being nice to others. See? And I think that's your example. Like, let's just, do it, right? On a day-to-day basis, right? And then we don't have to worry about any of that, right?
And the good thing is we're gonna come back again.
Yeah. Worst case scenario.
Yeah, exactly. We're not gonna be perfect in this life.
Yeah,
It's far away from that.
we do our best now.
We'll come and we'll continue, right? We'll keep going, right? We'll keep going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anything else?
I just want to say that we can, like, how can we do that? Like, what's the lesson? What am I going to practice today? To me, my script I get from the gospel at home. I do the gospel at home with a few friends. And it's like, as you said, oh my God, it's simple lessons, but we forget about it. So to me, it's like going to school every week. We read a little bit and we spend sometimes like 5 weeks on the same theme. And it's like it's like a reminder. You should do, that's what you should do. That's what you should do. You realize you don't do it, but at least we're planting little seeds. So to me, the gospel is my script, so I don't forget what to practice in a week.
So right, yeah. So the gospel at home is so important. I had the same experience with Kata. Like when we read at home with the kids, and now they have their own book they read, and then we read the gospel and but we find that gives us that moment of reflection, right? We forget things, right? We don't think about this, right, all the time, right? You're so right. So the gospel, like doing it as obviously at least once a week, but as much as we can, right? To go back and look at it.
If I might.
Yeah.
We forget temporarily because at the moment when we're in school to do an exam, we don't have the book with you.
Yes. Yeah.
That moment is that forget it is that you don't have the book all the time.
Yeah.
You gotta do the test. The test is there every day.
Every day.
You fail every day. But the book is there, but you're doing the exam, so you can't
gotta
read the
study
book.
though, yeah. You have to prepare, right? Yeah, I mean, the idea of the analogy of the school is perfect, right? Because really that's where we are, right? It's a big school. We just have to, keep moving, right? Keep studying, keep practicing. Yeah, just like those guys, right? I see them kind of morally where I am, development, right? So we're babies, right? In the moral scale of evolution, right? We're still complaining like a 2-year-old when things go wrong, that's kind of where we are, right? And the moral evolution of things, right?
It reminds a friend that sent my advice about a book, right? And it's from a guy from the US. He has an institution that in 30 days, no complaints or something.
Oh, okay,
like that.
okay, yeah.
Then those to know they give a bracelet, and during that period you try to have no complaints, no gossip. You don't have negative about anything. If you break, you have to change the side.
Oh, there you go.
So you keep forcing
The
them.
reminder.
And then when I start to read the book, like I was saying, like there are people that take 20 years to go that 30 days. When they get himself with talk. I start, my bracelet broke and I didn't complete. So the book is there, I still gonna finish.
Well, yeah, you know, we're on this journey for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? And you're right, like, you know, just simple things like not complaining, that's, you know, and it's funny because I tell this guys all the time, like, you know, you actually start complaining, and all of a sudden I catch myself complaining the same way, right? You know, like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna do this, right? Yeah. That's interesting, that's interesting. All right, anything else? No? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for the lovely discussion. This is great. Thank you for those who joined us online. We'll now get ready for the passes. So have a lovely weekend for those online. Hope to see you guys next Sunday.